Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our brand new podcast where we dive headfirst into our favorite universes created by our two favorite authors. I am Austin, your co-host for today's adventure.
And I'm Abby. We are two book nerds who could talk for hours about the heroes and villains of Middle-earth and Westeros. What started as a couple of siblings comparing notes on two powerhouse fantasy series has become a full-blown podcast, and we're so excited to wander these worlds with you.
So, you're probably wondering, why these two authors? Well, both J.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin have a profound ability to create these vast, intertwined universes that are easy to escape into and provide a wide array of characters to love and hate.
Absolutely. Whether you're a diehard fan who can quote whole passages, or if you're someone just starting your journey into these realms, we've got something for you. Our goal is to make these stories accessible to everyone, no matter your level of familiarity.
And a bit about us. Abby and I grew up surrounded by these tales. Our dad mandated that we read all the Lord of the Rings books before we could watch any of the movies, and we would all meet up and watch new episodes of Game of Thrones on Sunday nights.
We've had countless discussions about our favorite characters, unexpected plot twists, and the sneaky foreshadowing used throughout both sets of novels. This banter fueled our desire to create a podcast.
And in our upcoming episodes, we're gonna, expect some deep dives into the lore and the characters, some comparisons between the realms, and even some interviews with some special guests who love these series just as much as we do.
And don't worry, we'll keep it light and conversational and fun. We want this to feel like you're sitting around with fellow fans having a lively chat about your favorite stories.
And we encourage you guys to join the conversation online, share your theories, tell us your grievances, or just chat about how you discover these epic sagas yourself.
For example, what's your favorite character arc in Game of Thrones? Or your favorite battle scene in The Lord of the Rings? We want to hear from you.
If it's not the Battle of Pelennor Fields, I'm judging you a little. So for the love of the lore, grab a flag and a veil and let's go on an adventure. Welcome back to Middle-earth, my dear fellow hobbits. Today, we'll be covering the real Chapter 1, and as a bonus, we're going to go into Chapter 2 today. So, I do want to start with a bit of a recap of Episode 1, because the first two chapters, they're really more just prologues, kind of covered the deities, the people of these stories, just to kind of set the scene for what's to come in this whole book. So, quick recap is Eru Iluvatar. He's God. He's the OG. Mm-hmm. He created everybody, and he created his Ayunar, who are the angels. And the angels, the Ayunar, sang this beautiful harmony together, and that beautiful harmony actually became a physical manifestation, and that physical manifestation is called Earth. And now they want to shape the Earth. Arda, he'll change names a couple of times, into something malleable, something they can put actual people on. So he sends down the Valar, who are Ayunar, but he just gives them a special name because they actually go down. But one of these Valar, he ain't with it. He says, I want to do my own thing. And his name's Melkor. He is the big bad of the story. He is the guy who will constantly be in contention with Eru and all the other Valar. And Melkor kind of wants to make Arda into his own realm, his own world, the way he sees it. So Eru deploys these Valar to kind of combat this disharmony. And that's basically the scene for the whole story. Now, there's a lot of more names that'll come up that we covered last episode. So if you haven't listened to episode 1, I highly encourage, because we cover a lot of names that are going to come up throughout this story, and we're about to get some of them here. So please go give episode 1 a listen really quick if you haven't. But yes, this goes way deeper, but I think that's a nice service level intro to what we got to do here. So I'd say let's officially set off with Chapter 1 here. All right. So Chapter 1, pretty fitting name. It is called Of the Beginning of Days. So this chapter is fairly self-explanatory, and it recovers some of what I just talked about, but then we really get into it's called the First War. Oh. It is the first war of Arda. It is the first war between Melkor and Eru and all of his Valar. So this first war began before the Valar had begun shaping the earth. They were kind of in the middle of it. They were all singing their songs, singing their pretty songs. and trying to make the earth look all pretty. And Melkor came in and said, nah, I'm changing it. So Tolkien specifically mentions that it does start before that because he said, ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon the earth. So AKA that earth be desolate.
There's no humans yet.
Ain't no humans, ain't no elves, ain't no nothing. So he does say during this period that after Melkor comes and disrupts everything, that Melkor actually has a pretty lengthy upper hand over the Valar and Eru. He doesn't say a specific time. He just says for an extended period of time or a sustained conquest is what he said. So we don't know how long that is, but Melkor, he won for quite a long time. And Eru kind of came down and said, I had enough of that crap. And he sent one of the Valar, who we covered last episode. His name is Tulkas. And Tulkas, who we think is definitely
named after Tolkien.
100%.
And he's the soldier.
Yes, he is the god of war. You could see it as he's strong. He is a soldier, as my co-host just said. So Eru says, yeah, yeet. Turkus, go down there and deal with it. So Turkus shows up.
Tulkas.
I said, what did I say? Turkus? My bad, Tulkas. My bad, bro. That's on me. Sent him down, and Tolkien, the greatest descriptor of Tulkas, is he is described as walking around with wrath and laughter. And apparently this wrath and laughter scares Melkor so much that he's like, I'm going to dip for now. Fine, the world's yours. I'm going to go in the corner and scheme. So Melkor leaves Arda altogether. And at last, after what feels like a long time, there is peace in the world. And now the Valar can get back to what they were doing. They can sing their songs, start shaping the world, building mountains, rivers, grasses, all that hoopla. So this is where last episode I talked about how these gods are fallible. They have good intentions, the good ones do, but they are not capable. Or yes, they are
all powerful.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like this is one of the first nods to that because while they had this lasting peace, I don't know, he doesn't tell you how far in the future this is, but I guess all gods need a break. Who would have known? During this peace, the Valar actually kind of throw a bit of a party, if you will. So what's happened before this is they brought order, seasonal lands are forming. Yavanna, she is another one of the gods that we talked about last episode. She's planted some seeds, and you're starting to see grasses grow, trees grow. But as our world functions, plants need light. So Aule, who, again, talked about last episode, he creates the Dwarves. We'll get into that later. Aule makes two lamps that provide light. They're called Iluin and Ormal. And they were placed in north and south of Arda, and it is light all the time. There's no night. It's all happy joy forever. And after this is when I think our gods get a little reluctant. I think we get a tinge lazy, and they get into party mode. So they decide to take a break, and Manwë, the leader of the Valar, comes and says, all right, guys, I'm going to throw a big feast. We're all going to come celebrate. We've been working hard, and we need some R&R. You know, I guess all gods need a little R&R.
Work hard, play hard.
Work hard, play hard, as they say. So this definitely feels. We've talked about some biblical connections.
Yeah.
He even says in here that the gods rested on this day. So I'm like, okay, all right, come on now.
So Sunday.
We're really
Partying on a Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I guess club's going up, you know. So the Valar rested and they feasted after their labor. And during this whole time, Melkor, he doesn't describe how he works, how his magic works, but he has some kind of foresight that he can see and watch what the Valar are doing. And seeing the Valar kind of pump the brakes, have a party, enjoy each other, this makes Melkor a little angry.
FOMO.
Yeah, FOMO. It is a severe case of FOMO. And so he sends a couple of spies. He recruits. Tolkien goes on a whole page and a half about how he recruited people.
Who did he recruit?
So it's some of the lesser angels. It's
Oh.
it's a tier below the Valar. It's just now that we are having more trees and beasts in the world, he's recruiting kind of more regular people. So he says, all right, go check out what they're doing, and then I'm gonna cook something up over here. So this time it's called the Spring of Arda, and I think our spring lasts a couple of months.
Yeah.
And this it's hinted that this is centuries, that this is this lasting peace, and things are growing, trees are growing, light all day, every day. And apparently this feast goes on for many, many eras, as he put it. And during this time, our boy Tolkien gets wifed up to Nessa. And I really like this story. It's very quick, it's very hit, and then don't talk about it later. Nessa, I actually did not talk about last episode because in the grand scheme of everything, she really doesn't do much. Sorry, Nessa. But what I think is cool about it is she is considered like the least of the Valar. Like she's at the bottom. But Tolkien kind of had some. What's the word for that?
Empathy?
Yeah, a little bit of empathy for her, and he really thought she was beautiful in her own way, because she is the god of speed. So I don't know if he was like, oh man, that goes good with war. I don't know. But he took Nessa's hand and they got married at this feast, and that prolonged the festivities. And of course, that made Melkor even more angry that now the Valar are getting married and living happier lives than he is. So, of course, this guy's in the kitchen cooking, and he says, all right, I see you guys are all distracted. So he takes his first action again after the first war, and he passes the Walls of Night, which sounds pretty rad. And the Walls of Night, you can really think of it, for you regular LOTR nerds, you know that Minas Tirith is surrounded by a giant outer wall, and then everything inside that is kind of protected. Same thing with Arda. Eru built a giant wall around Arda after Melkor left to kind of keep him out. Apparently didn't work very well because his Valar are getting lit.
We're going to talk about lots of walls today.
A lot of walls. That's the theme of today.
Yeah.
So Melkor sneaks back in. His magic is darkness, so people are like, how do the Valar not notice? Well, again, they're having a good time celebrating a wedding, and Melkor is darkness, so they can't really tell when he sneaks past the wall. It's a whole thing. But he brings the servants with him, and he gets into Middle-earth without the Valar knowing, and they begin to delve into the earth, and he builds his first fortress. And that's our dog. This fortress is called Autumno. I probably butchered that pronunciation. That's just how I say it.
Okay.
It's built in the north, so they're partying kind of down southeast. He's up north. He's far away, so he doesn't want to get their attention. But what really starts to let the Valar know after a while is that they start to see the grasses die. Tolkien talks about how the rivers were choked with weeds and slime. So I think if I saw some slime put in the river, I'd be like, oh, there's something bad up there. So the Valar are like, okay, I think something is amok. Amiss.
Amok.
Yes. So they kind of spring back into action, and we are now back into the droughts of a full-on war.
Okay.
And Melkor kind of throws the first punch, since they didn't know he was even inside the walls, and his disease, if you will, has spread further than they initially realized, and now is full-on panic time, and they're like, oh my god, what are we going to do? So it's not really specifically described how, because I think Tolkien wants you to tease your imagination a lot, but Melkor pushes the Valar so far back that he is actually able to destroy the two lamps that were giving the plants life, the light.
They were north and south. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So he destroyed the north, worked his way south, and then destroyed the south one.
Gotcha.
He doesn't say how, he doesn't say what he did, but all he does say is that after Melkor destroyed them, these two lamps fell to the earth, and it began to scorch the earth. So everything began to burn. I'm just picturing that Elmo meme where he's surrounded by fire and he's doing that maniacal laugh. Have you ever seen this?
No.
That's my picture of Melkor.
Okay.
He's Elmo in fire.
Okay.
So he's pretty happy right now. The world is burning, and he can kind of reshape it to how he wants it. And this struggle, again, lasts for a long time. Not really said how long, but an extended period of time. And that's when our boy, Tolkien, comes back. But this time, he's got the Grace of the Valar Manwë with him. So now Melkor is even more scared, and he flees yet again. So the Valar know now that everything's scorched and Melkor kind of has his seeds sown throughout this new Arda that they have to kind of hit the reset button. So the Valar actually decide to leave. They head east and they kind of leave Middle Earth to its doom, unfortunately. And it's upsetting because for me, he talks about how there was horses, there was other beasts that were left behind. I know.
Justice for the animals.
I know. And I'm like, all right, Valar, are you that good? You didn't even save them. So they fled to the east and they kind of said, we need to regroup. We need to figure this out. And their labor for creating the world begins all over again. So for now, Melkor has kind of stuck his claim on Middle Earth. He said, this is mine. This is my land. You guys can't come back. And to protect themselves and their new land, they build what Tolkien describes as a wall, but it's actually just giant mountains. It's the biggest mountains in Middle Earth, and they're so big that not even Melkor can cross them. And the new land they live in is called Aman, and the big wall is called Pelori. See, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Well, that's all right.
That's all right. It's close enough. And on top of this, the tallest mountain of Pelori, that is where Manwë rests. That's where he stakes his throne, and he faces west towards Melkor to stay on watch at all times. So he kind of makes that ultimate sacrifice of letting the other Valar go, continue on to Aman to rebuild, and he says, I'm going to stay here and kind of keep watch. So it's kind of seen as a great sacrifice in the book. They consider him very admirable for that because it sounds a wee bit lonely. But he just kind of has to hang up there for centuries waiting for the inevitable attack of Melkor to come again. So during this time, we see the Valar establish a new land in Aman, and that is where they finally make something we will hear for the rest of time. It's called Valinor. Valinor is a land that only the Valar and later on the elves can live in. Spoilers for Lord of the Rings if you don't know the ending. What are you doing? That's where Frodo goes at the end. That's where Bilbo goes with them. Eventually, Sam goes with them. Gimli goes later to meet Legolas, Gandalf, all of Galadriel, all of them. This is where they go way later in the books. But Valinor is shut off to humanity for reasons that we will discuss actually here in a few chapters. But they have finally established a place of, I believe Tolkien called it perpetual peace. So now that they have their new land, they know they have protection with Manwë on the mountain. They finally feel safe, and they even feel safe enough to start building cities. And Yavanna, who we talked about last time, she's considered the goddess of beauty, all that jazz. She says, okay, we need a new source of light. We need a new source of life here. And she sits on the mound of Ezelohar, and she begins to sing her songs as she plants two little seeds. And upon the mound and these two seeds grow two very large trees, and that's what the tree of Gondor is based off of.
That type of tree.
It is the two trees of Valinor, and you'll hear a lot about these. They're going to be the main focal point of what Melkor is going to try to destroy from here on because he knows that this is their new source. Again, Tolkien's not a guy to describe his magic very much. He doesn't really say what these trees do besides they exude light. He gives the names. The names are Teleprion and Lorielin. I probably botched that second one, but the making of these trees brings what he calls the days of the bliss. So they, hi, special guest. That's our puppers. It's Gracie. So this is a time of bliss, a time of peace, and Valinor is described as a land of immense beauty. And these trees actually help them start keeping track of time. Fun fact.
All right.
So in Valinor, their days are, I believe he says they're only 12 hours. So these trees kind of rotate their brightness, their hue, if you will. So as one dampens, the other kind of brightens.
Okay.
But there's a specific time of the day when they're both kind of half lit, and that is when they have their celebrations, because it's the brightest that it is ever in Valinor.
All right.
So these trees are very sacred. They're what's giving everybody life, and
Do we see these trees in season 1?
we sure do.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yes, perfect. So in Rings of Power, we actually get a snippet of these trees. It's one of the first shots of the show, I think.
I think so.
The elf crests the hill looking for Galadriel, and you see in the distance 2 trees that are shining bright. The only thing that is a tinge different is that one in the show, I think they're both yellowish, if I'm remembering right. In reality, one is actually like darker.
Okay.
It still exudes light. It's kind of like a blue light almost is what
Okay.
it's described as.
Gotcha.
And the other is very yellow. So they do depict him in the show. So if you ever want to check that out, you can go see it. But these are the end all be all sacredness of Valinor. They're what give them life, and they can now keep track of time, and they can actually tell you how many ages are passing. So I'm guessing that's why Tolkien has never said how long Melkor's conquests have lasted or anything, because they didn't know what
Right.
time was yet. So now, after all the labors of the Valar, creating new land, finally creating peace, Eru kind of finally starts to come back in and says, now that we have actual land, I would like to put more of my children there. And his children are the elves. And actually the men. And there's still a great discrepancy on which Eru loves more. So when he made the elves, and I will say we'll get into more of this next episode, but there's a snippet here in this chapter. The elves, he grants the gift of eternal life, as we know. And he gives humans actually a special gift. And the gift that the elves don't think it's a gift, because the gift is basically an endless chase of a greater victory, is what Tolkien calls it. So it's up for interpretation of what that means. It just kind of means that humans are conquerors. They fan out. They want to see the world. They want to go to the stars, all that jazz. So he gave them that gift because when humans die in this world, they get to go to the afterlife, whereas elves do not.
Gotcha.
So that's why the elves are a little jelly, because when they die, they don't get that gift. They're just, some are reborn, but some kind of just cease to exist, which is brutal. So there's a bit of jealousy there, and in the books, even the elves describe the humans as more Melkor than Eru, which is, I think, just a little bit of jealousy talking, but that's just me. So Eru gives his people these gifts, and it is declared that the children of Luvatar will join the second music of the Ainur, which is basically going to be the reformation of Middle-earth after Mr. Melkor is dealt with.
Okay.
And that's chapter 1.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it's very much, the info dump has begun.
Yeah, well, it's getting juicy.
Yes, we finally have some drama, some tea, if you will.
We love tea.
We do. And it's a very short chapter, but it's a very full chapter.
Yeah.
Information pack.
Yes, so there's a lot of things happening, a lot of moving pieces, and now we can finally start getting some people on this land that we have created
Yeah.
and start getting some more storylines.
And elves and everything.
Yes, and now it goes straight into chapter 2. We have the chapter is called of Ayule and Yavanna, and basically now we see more of the errors of our gods here in this chapter. I'm not in Aule, he did create the dwarves. I'm not going to say that's a mistake, but I'll kind of explain that here. So the chapter starts. Aule and Yavanna are our 2 characters in this chapter, and while Middle Earth is in the middle of its darkness, Aule is getting a little impatient for the children, which is the elves and the men, to arrive. Eru's kind of waiting for everything to calm down a bit, waiting for Melkor to kind of go back into his hole. But Aule is kind of like, look, let's go.
It's go time.
Yeah, it's go time. So he goes into the far undergrounds of Middle Earth, and he actually creates the dwarves. So he wanted to teach the dwarves kind of the lore of the world, and tell them everything about Eru and and to continue spreading the harmony. And that is when he created the 7 fathers of the dwarves. And this is where Aule is a little naughty, because he did not tell the other Valar or Eru that he was going to do this. Yes.
Sneaky snuck.
Yes. And obviously this secret's going to get out. You're not going to be able to hide these guys underground forever. So Eru kind of comes to him and says, hey man, that wasn't cool. He disapproves of the dwarves, and now Aule fears that Eru is actually going to smite all of the dwarves, and they will cease to exist. And I think we've established that Eru's not that kind of god. He is moved to pity when he sees the dwarves and all that they're creating, because he already sees that they are master craftsmen, creating their hammers and their plates and all that jazz. So Eru does decide we'll let him live, and we need to kind of regroup and deal with the Melkor problem though. So he does make them stay underground. They don't really see the light of day for a while. But he does make the decision, much at the chagrin of Aule, that the dwarves need to go to sleep until the other children come.
All right.
Sounds a little dark. I'm kind of hoping everybody's just taking like a little nap.
It sounds like Snow White.
It does.
The dwarves.
But the dwarves went to sleep.
Not Snow White.
Yes. Do they need a little smooch to wake up? Who knows?
Who knows?
So now the dwarves are asleep. They're kind of waiting down in their caves for the other children to arrive, and we're getting close to them coming, but we still have a big Melkor problem. So a little lore about the dwarves. Aule, obviously, they worship him because he is their creator. They call him Mahal, and that's a name you'll see come up quite a bit. And they believe that the dwarves believe their existence is strictly to aid Aule in their fight against Melkor. Aule kind of tries to break it to him that you guys are not strong enough. Sorry. So it's tough realization, but it is admirable. And then we kind of get into how, because Aule and Yavanna they are an item.
Oh, they got married?
Yes.
All right.
So they are wed, and he actually kept this secret from his wifey.
Oh.
Yep. And Yavanna is like the goddess of creation and beauty. So
Right.
she's like, yo, why are you stepping on my toes and not telling me?
She should have been consulted.
Yeah. So she obviously was a little miffed, and she also, but with Eru knowing, she had her own creations. That would be the plants and the trees that we see. And she, after hearing this from Eru, so timeline, I'm sorry. Aule did tell Yavanna before he went and told Eru and all them before they found out. So Yavanna kind of went to Manwë to kind of get some counsel and be like, what should I do about this? Should I tell? Should we help abolish? And Yavanna, she loves all creation, so she is on the side of like they should live. They have their worth. Let's not mess with it. It was a mistake by Aule, but let's learn from it. And Yavanna then kind of goes on a little rebellious moment, because then she sits back on her little hill where she planted the 2 seeds, and she begins to recall the music of the Ainur that created the world overall. And I forget his words, but something about the passion being so strong, all of the trees and all the branches lifted towards Eru in the sky while she was thinking of the song. And that is actually where these trees came to life. That is where Ents came from. Yes.
Oh, I
So
love
that
that.
is her, like, she's like, fine, all right, if you get to make creation, I get to make creation too.
Right.
So I actually really like this. And along with the Ents, she also created the Great Eagles. So the Great Eagles, that's why in the books, everybody's like, why do the Eagles just know how to be there?
Right.
It's because of Yavanna.
Okay.
She's kind of guiding them. And no, Frodo cannot just take the Eagles from the Shire to Mordor. Don't you dare come at me with that theory. Sorry, people do that.
Not how it works.
Nope. So then, we are now at the time after all this hubbub of these two making their little creations. We are now at the time we're ready for the elves to be awoken, and we are ready. We are preparing for the big war against Melkor because we are ready to take back Middle Earth and to actually have a functional planet. And it's next episode really is going to be a big info dump. A lot of names coming at you again, so I do want to warn you. But the last note of this chapter is talking about how the elves awoke, and with them awakening, that also brought down at the exact same time all the spirits that inhabit the eagles, the trees, and then now we start to see the dwarves awake as well. So the stage has been set, the chess pieces are in play, and now we begin. So the Great War is upon us, and we'll just have to see next episode with, I assume, our special guest to really dive into how the elves and Melkor come to clash.
Duke it out.
Yeah. So that was a big info dump, and I apologize, but these first really 4 chapters, it's just a giant intro
Yeah.
to the main event, and now we are here. So strap in. It's gonna be a ride. It gets pretty fun here for a couple of chapters now that all the names are out there, all the info's out there, and we are ready to wage war.
Love it. Okay, so 2 thoughts.
Yes.
One, is any of this kind of, because like the first war and the second war and all that reminds me a little bit of like World War I and World War II.
Right.
But I think he also splits everything into like ages.
Yes.
So are we all still in the first age?
We're
or-
basically in the first age right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Because now that time has been established, we can track properly, and I think this is where even the elves begin keeping records of everything.
Got it.
So yes, we are
First age.
about to launch into the first stage here with the elves.
And then my second thought is that the Ents are like my favorite. I don't know why. I just love them.
Yep.
Like they've been around forever. They
Yep.
don't take no shit.
They're just chilling.
Yes.
They are great. So yeah, Yavanna is their creator, and that's kind of why in the books it really explains a lot of they are always doing good. They're not particularly on the side, but they're definitely fighting the darkness. That's
And
how
they're
they,
like, take care of the earth.
Yeah.
Like that's
stop cutting us down, bro.
reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yep. So they are very green thumb, and yeah, I think that's really all I got for these 2 chapters. I think we did it.
Chew.
My brain's gonna explode, but
Well,
we did it.
we did it.
So that's Lord of the Rings, and as we now like to do, we are gonna cross over to a whole nother world
Yes.
and learn about.
Westeros. Yes, we are gonna in Westeros. We will be talking about more walls, and we're still way up in the north
For our next little bit.
So stay
Yes.
tuned. All right, as we journey on over to Westeros this evening, we will be visiting the Wall, which is large.
Pretty
think,
big.
think like the Great Wall of China, but made of ice, kind of. And then while we're visiting the Wall, we are going to also learn about the Watchers on the Wall, or sometimes called the Night's Watchmen, or just the Watch. So, yes, we're going to be spending a lot of time up north in the cold, talking about ice and snow and a lot of dudes that wear black.
Just dude bros hanging out.
Strap in, keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. Here we go.
I'm ready.
the wall itself is a structural barrier. It's an actual physical structural barrier between the north, which we introduced you to last week, and all of the people that live in the north. And then beyond the wall is the lands of the free folk, as well as the lands of always winter, which we will touch on a little bit today.
That sounds horrible.
Yes. And really, there's not much known about the lands of always winter because it's like
Ain't nobody want to go there.
it's uncharted territory. So the wall itself is pretty impressive to look at. It's 100 leagues long, and I don't know what leagues are, so I looked it up.
What is a league?
That is apparently 1 league is 3 miles, so it's 300 miles long.
That's pretty long.
Yes. And its height changes as it goes.
Oh,
It follows the geography of the land, so it does go up and down hills and mountains wherever those are. So the wall itself is like 700 feet high, but when you factor in like building a 700-foot wall on top of a hill or something, the highest point is actually 900 feet above sea level. And that is taller, which makes that portion of the wall taller than the high tower in Old Town, where, you know, the house Hightower
yes.
is from. And they like to really, really claim that theirs is taller. It's all
I feel like this feels like the modern day when you see like a souped up truck. We're like,
Yes.
are you compensating for something?
right. Right. And the high towers also like to claim that if you go to the top of the high tower, you can see the wall from there, even though map-wise, Old Town and the high tower is way down in the south and the wall is way up in
That doesn't seem possible.
It's not.
Okay.
It's just a lot of the greens,
It's a lot of hoopla.
Those greens.
Yep.
So the wall was also supposedly built by Bran the Builder. Surprise, surprise. He built everything, apparently.
Done did.
Allegedly. But some people say that it was actually kind of a co-opted effort between the First Men and the Children of the Forest, which we learned a lot about both of those groups last episode. So if you did not listen to, again, if I just want to reiterate, if you did not listen to episode 1, you're going to want to go back and listen.
Yes.
Because you'll learn a lot about the First Men and the Children. And this would have been after they made their peace on the Isle of Faces. They are now working together to construct the wall.
Could you imagine building that and then they give credit to some random guy? You're like, what?
Bran the Builder, yeah.
What the heck? We did all this work for what?
Yes. Just like everything in Westeros that's like a big deal was all Bran the Builder.
Yep.
Yes.
Just give it to that guy. He
Yeah.
did it.
So potentially some giants pitched in as well. It's hard to say. So, but we do know it was built roughly 8,000 years ago, which is a long time. I think this is supposed to kind of be Westeros's version of like ancient Egypt, because there was also a lot of stuff going on over in Valyria at this time, and we'll talk more about Valyria later. But 8,000 years ago was like stuff was starting to go down. So to me, it just reminds me of like ancient Egypt and how they had all these architectural advances.
Wonders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So the way they built it was they had these really large stone blocks that are kind of the base. And then on top of that's really it, like just one stone block is the base. And then there's just layer upon layer upon layer of ice blocks on top of that.
Fascinating.
Yes. And then to join the ice blocks together, as the ice blocks got taller, they would just spray water and then put the next slab of ice on, and the water in between would fuse them together. So,
Well done.
or some people would also say that there's like magic woven in there.
Yes.
Yes. The ice blocks themselves were like harvested from nearby lakes. That there are, if you look at the map, there are some smaller lakes there now that allegedly were a lot bigger back then. And now they're small because all of their water went to the wall. But they were hauled on sledges from the lakes to the wall. So that's pretty advanced technology for 8,000 years ago, I would say.
So.
And yes, we already kind of touched on that. So the legends kind of just say like the ice blocks were also fused together with some magical spells, provided by the children of the forest. And that's what kept all of the magical threats that were beyond the wall at bay, such as wights and like WIGHTs, to be clear, and
I just
and others.
Oh.
Others has a capital O in all of the
Oh.
Game of Thrones books.
For what?
So we're going to talk a lot more about this in this episode. This is going to be our first little introduction to the fact that the Night King is completely made up by the show. The books do
Bummer.
not talk about a Night King. They don't call them White Walkers in the books.
Oh.
The the White Walkers that are on the show that are kind of like the soldiers of the Night King, those are called others with a capital O. There's no leader.
I feel like we're in Lost right now.
Yeah,
It's the others.
it's the others. There's no leader of the others. It's just like a group of them that clearly are in charge and have a magical quality to them. It's not just like regular people that died and came back to life with blue eyes. Those people that died beyond the wall and came back to life with the blue eyes, those people are called wights, WIGHTS.
Yes. Clarification.
Yes. So,
like
yeah.
a barrel whites from Lord of the Rings.
Yes, like that.
Oh.
Yes. So it's kind of, that's how they're referred to in the books, and that's how we're going to refer to them, because get rid of the idea in your head of a Night King
So they just wanted to give the others a face with the Night King, I assume.
and a leader.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think, yeah.
I kind of like the others better, but that's just me.
There's a lot, it makes them more mysterious, I
Yeah.
think. So yeah, we'll dive more into that in a little bit when we get further into talking about the Night's Watch. But the wall itself is another show falsism, is that the wall on top of it, like if you're walking on it, is a lot wider in the books than
Oh,
the show.
that's nice.
It's wide enough for 12 mounted knights, so like 12 knights on
Horsies.
horses to ride next to each other. And then the base is even wider than that. And then across the top, they have some crushed up stone that they kind of use as gravel, and they spread that across the top to kind of help it be like a non-slip surface.
Who was the first sucker that fell? And they were like, we should probably put some gravel up here.
Yeah, they need those little, those like fuzzy socks with the stickies.
With the
on
stickies on the bottom. Yes.
They need fuzzy socks. So yeah, there's that. There are tunnels from each castle, because we'll talk about that in a minute as well, how many castles there are. But at each castle along the wall, there is a tunnel from that castle to the other side of the wall. But the abandoned castles, they've placed ice blocks over those tunnels to like seal them up so they're not usable anymore. And then each castle also had a bunch of cells carved into the base of the wall those were mostly used to like store their food and like meats and stuff that have to be kept cold. But occasionally, if necessary, they were used to house prisoners,
Of course.
usually wildling prisoners, or one of the Night's Watchmen that was like acting up. You throw them in the ice cell.
Can't be doing that.
No, you cannot. And then the wall itself kind of changes color, which I think it's fun. Yeah.
I like that. A little pizzazz for your
Yeah, a
wall.
little pizzazz. It depends. Sometimes it depends on the time of day. Like it's going to reflect like the sunrise and the sunset, so it can be kind of pinky colored. But then it's also whether it's like a warm day, like a warm sunny day, it's going to be more icy blue, or if it's kind of an overcast day, it's going to be more gray. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's that we don't always see that in the show. There are occasions, rare, but there are occasions at the wall and beyond the wall where the temperature is above freezing, contrary to popular belief. It is not always snowing there. So on those days, the wall does start to melt slightly, and the rivulets of water melting off of it make it look like it's weeping. So in the books, you'll hear that a lot, especially during the John chapters, you'll hear like, oh, the wall is weeping today.
Aw.
And it's just because it's warmer out, so the ice is melting. And then its length, it's 300 miles, start over in the west at the Frost Fangs, which is a mountain range. And then it goes east to Eastwatch by the Sea, is the last little castle thing that they defend on the east side. It was built in the aftermath of the Long Night, which was when it was winter, and not just winter like darkness winter, like no sunlight type of winter.
For a whole generation.
For a whole generation, yes. People were
Brutal.
born and died in that type of life. So when that ended was when they began construction, and it probably took a few hundred years to complete the construction. So yes. And then along the wall, like we kind of already touched on this, there's 19 different forts along that route. But even at the height of the Watch's history, only 17 were actively defended. But now, in present day Game of Thrones, if you read those books, there is only 3 of the 19 defended.
They've gotten lazy.
Yes. The 3 that are defended is the furthest west one is called the Shadow Tower. It's only got about 200 men there. Castle Black is
Heard of
at
that
the
one.
yes, indeed. That one's at the center. It's actually almost directly north of Winterfell, and it is, you know how the King's Road, if you know anything about their road systems in Westeros, the King's Road goes from King's Landing to several places in Westeros, but one of them is to Winterfell. And then if you keep going on the King's Road after Winterfell, you eventually end up at Castle Black. And that's got the most men. There's 600 of them there. And then Eastwatch by the Sea is over on the east coast. And that's the only portion of the Night's Watch that has like a naval fleet, because they are right on the Bay of Seals is what they call it. So there's 150 of them there. So total, the Night's Watch is sitting at less than 1,000 members.
It's not a lot.
It is not. So it's kind of sad. It's a sad little decline they've had recently. And I thought this was interesting. I kind of knew this in the back of my head, but not till I did more research did I fully connect that Castle Black is actually not the largest fort that they had along the wall. It was actually called the Night Fort, which is a little bit east of Castle Black. But as the Watch started to shrink and there weren't enough people to kind of keep up the Night Fort because it was so big, they decided, King's Landing decided it was too costly to maintain that one, so now it's abandoned.
Brutal.
And the next biggest one was Castle Black, so that's where they're at
Man.
now.
So people have just lost the faith.
Yeah. There is a narrow trail road. It's like if you go hiking, it's like a hiking trail that connects all 19 forts to make travel between them easier. But since so many of them are abandoned now, those are kind of overgrown as well. So now they just kind of use these like mules. The mules are raised at Eastwatch by the Sea, but they can actually travel on top of the wall a lot faster than men can navigate the trails. So if they have to trade goods or information or
They're going
something, they're going to use the mules.
Oh.
Each fort has kind of its own little version of how you access the top of it, but it's kind of just, they all have some sort of version of like a switchback stair case. With
People are walking upstairs in that thing.
They do.
I would not.
They do sometimes, yeah.
What was that, 700 feet up? Is that what it said?
700 feet, yeah.
Nah, I'm good, fam. Give me that elevator.
There's ramps, and then I think they call them like pulley cages, but it's an elevator, but they don't have electricity, so somebody's down there like pulleying it.
That poor sap.
Yes. So yeah. And this part we do learn a lot about in the show. They do talk about it a lot. None of the Night's Watch keeps or forts or whatever you want to call them have a curtain wall to defend them from the south, because their big thing is our only enemy is to the north, and we have the wall to defend against that enemy. So we don't need anything to protect us from the south because we have no enemies to the south. So they're just kind of open.
Big truss is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So there you have it. From the wall, atop the wall, you can see over to the other side, and there is kind of this big gap where there's no forestation, trees, plants, anything, and that is on purpose. They purposely cut back anything that grows within 100 feet of the wall.
So the show got that right.
They did get that right.
Wow.
Yes, yes. And that just kind of helps for, like, you know, if somebody's going to come through the forest to try to attack the wall,
You can see them.
you can see them, and you've got that 100-foot give or whatever, slack, I guess. So, yes. And the top of the wall does have some defensive machines, but they are very old and they are really not operational because they're so old they've frozen over.
Bummer.
Yes. But they have your typical like catapults, trebuchet, scorpions, things is like that. So there we go. The tunnels that go through the bottom have three separate. They're well defended. They're just, to sum it up, they are well defended. They have three separate iron gates and a thick oaken door. And that door has these huge chains that have to be unlocked and moved. Plus, each little section with its own little gates and doors has murder holes in the top where the watchmen can go up and,
Jeez.
throw stuff down at you. But this was intentional so that a small group of men could hold off a much larger group on the other side.
Well, they definitely have a small group of men now.
I do definitely have a small group now, yes. And then the Shadow Tower is even more well defended because it's, like we said, it's at the base of the Frost Fangs. I picture the Frost Fangs as kind of like the Rocky Mountains. Like they're so big and so snowy and icy, they're just kind of impassable. So the Shadow Tower doesn't really need a ton of... The only thing they really have to worry about is wildling raiders that try to climb up over the wall a little bit east of where the Shadow Tower is. They don't really have to defend their own tower a ton. And then Eastwatch by the Sea, like we already said, they do have a naval fleet. The naval fleet doesn't really have to mess with the wildlings at all because they don't really sail. But the naval fleet is mostly to keep out smugglers who are trying to trade with the wildlings because they can get a lot of good stuff from the wildlings, and they can make more money, I guess. I don't know, or get more goods. Who knows? But yes. And then another big thing among the watchmen and kind of everybody in the north kind of knows this. People from the south don't. We'll get to them later. They don't necessarily think the wall needs to be as defended as it is, but everybody in the north kind of knows that the wall can defend itself.
What does that mean?
So there's been a lot of cases where wildling raiders have tried to scale the wall, climb up it and get over to the other side. And when that happens, it is not unheard of. It's actually kind of common for the wall to break off a whole sheet of itself and send whoever is clung to that sheet down with it.
Oh, those poor saps.
Yes. So the wall's only known major vulnerability at this point in time is the Horn of Joramun, or also sometimes called the Horn of Winter.
See, is this something that was never covered in the show?
No, and it's a travesty. Because yes, I could go on a whole episode.
And we
about
shall in the future, I assume.
We will, yes. But yeah, so the Horn of Winter, when it gets blown, it supposedly is going to bring the wall down.
Jeez.
Is kind of its deal and why it was made. So, yeah.
Why would you? Who made it?
Joramun.
But it's a bold move, is all I'm saying.
It is. Yes, we will circle back to the Horn of Winter because...
Why did we not cover this in the show?
Do you want to... That could be a whole episode, Austin.
Episode coming.
Future episode.
Stay tuned.
Abby goes on a rant. No, but it is cool in the book. You hear a lot about the Horn of Winter throughout all the books. Yes, it is important. It's a big deal. And I don't want to give spoilers if you haven't read the books, but somebody has it. I will tell you that.
Okay.
Somebody.
See, I didn't read,
it.
so I don't know. So I'm with you guys who haven't.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes, indeed. So there you go. That is the wall. And now let's talk about the men that... The watchers on the wall, if you will. I do.
Little gaggle of men now.
The Night's Watch, yes. I do love the vow that they take. It's one of my favorite things, which I'll talk about it in a second.
Okay, I can't wait.
So yeah, the Night's Watch, they're just a militant order. They're actually the first militant order in Westeros because they're so old. They're like 8,000 years old. They are a sworn brotherhood. They do not let no ladies in, which is a shame.
That seems a little sus.
Yeah.
All right.
But they have defended the wall for its entire existence. So they started out during the Age of Heroes, which is kind of the beginning of time. And that back then they were made of thousands, multiple thousands, not less than 1,000, of noble knights. And it was a calling of the highest honor. They have always worn all black, and they referred to their vows that they take as taking the black. But as the millennia wore on, and the threat of giants and the whites and the others faded to pretty much just legend and children's stories, the watch has dwindled. Yes,
R.I.P.
dwindled they have. So the decline was already underway when Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros. They were already down to, I think, almost 2,000. But his arrival in Westeros sped up the process considerably. By the time he was done conquering, they were down under 1,000, and that's kind of where they've stayed since then.
Okay.
So, yes, the Watch is also the way people in Westeros view the Watch has completely changed since he came and conquered. It's no longer something that the sons of noble houses were willing to volunteer for.
I can't say that I blame them.
It was usually like the noble houses would send their youngest sons who
It's like considered a great honor,
yes,
I assume.
because like the older sons, that's who was going to inherit like the lands and the titles and everything.
But the youngest, you're like, you're dispensable. You can go.
You go. It's a high calling.
Yeah, this is an honor. I swear. I promise you.
Yes. So yes. Anyway, that now instead of sending their younger sons, now the noble houses are sending their prisoners to the wall.
Oh,
It's a great move.
we're losing some quality here.
Yes, indeed. And quantity.
quantity.
As well. Yes, but I still think that the oath that they take is very noble. It's a really cool, like when you do see it in the show, and the show does do it well, I think, the taking the black, like the words they say. And then once your vows are taken, that means all of your crimes and your debts are forgiven. So,
Okay.
interesting. And then another cool thing is if a Night's Watchman passes away for whatever reason during their burial rites at the end, they always say, "And now his watch has ended."
Oh,
Yes.
that could make me cry.
Yeah. So I like that.
I do too.
But out of all the Westerosi people, the Starks and most of the Northmen, and then even a couple of the Southern families as well, they still hold the Watch in pretty high regard. They're always offering support, not just with like people, but also like food and supplies, arms, armor, things like that. Of course, the Lannisters think it's just a place to put their prisoners.
They would.
And they think that they don't deserve any resources from King's Landing.
God.
So yes, that turns into a whole situation. But when you enter the Watch and take your vows, you get put into one of three groups of people. So just going to touch a little bit on those three groups and what their jobs are. You could be put into the stewards, and the stewards are responsible for making everything that everyone needs, basically. So they make all the food, they make all the clothing, the arms, the supplies. It includes the farmers, the cooks, the smiths, everything in between. Then the builders. The builders are responsible for keeping up the wall and the castles. They're the ones that actually, they do get to go beyond the wall briefly, because they're the ones that go over there and clear away the forestation on the other side to keep that 100-foot gap intact. They are also, after some of those warmer days when the wall is weeping, once it cools back off, they're going to go up to the top and pour these big buckets of water down the side to help restore some of the thickness.
Pretty easy upkeep.
It's pretty, yeah, you know.
I like that.
Yeah, they do the gravel. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, you know. And then we come to the Rangers, which is what John really wanted to
Jon
be.
Snow.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to at some point.
That's right. You gotta. Benjen Stark was also a Ranger.
R.I.P.
Yes. So the Rangers are the ones that actually venture beyond the wall, pretty far into the lands up there. And they travel around from castle to castle just to help out when needed. And then beyond the wall, they use ranger roads to travel. There are these little, they call them roads, but they're just, it's a glorified hiking trail. These,
Not well maintained.
yes, they are better maintained than the old trails that connected the 19 forts.
Gotcha.
They're a little better because the wildlings use them too.
Right.
So, yeah. But all of the members of the Night's Watch, whether they are a steward or a builder or a ranger, they're all trained in combat. They know how to use a variety of weapons. So that is why, because if you remember Samwell Tully,
Oh, the goat.
he's a steward, of course. And he actually ends up helping Maester Aemon, but he still has to go through like the combat training that the rest of them did, and that's just because all of them do, regardless of, which I think is good.
Yeah,
That's
I would.
good-
Yes, the more the merrier
Yes,
in a war.
indeed. And then every one of those groups has a commanding officer, which is called the first whatever. So there's a first builder, a first steward, and a first ranger. Benjen Stark was the first ranger till he went missing. So yes, and then the Lord Commander is the commanding officer over the commanding officers. He's like the president.
The head honcho.
Yes, and the Lord Commander has always been an elected official, which is
Do I
different.
hear a tinge of democracy?
A tinge in Westeros.
Wow. Who would have thought?
Yes. So yeah, and every member of the Night's Watch, even from the other two castles, I believe, get to cast a vote. And once that man is elected, he serves until his death. You cannot retire from being the Lord Commander.
Oh.
You just do it till you dead.
Brutal.
Yes. And this is really the only example of democracy we have in Westeros. I think even in Essos too, they have some interesting things over there, but not a full-on democracy like this. So it is kind of cool that there's
Yeah.
one.
Progress.
And it's lasted this long. It's been that way forever, and it's almost 8,000 years old now. And it has been challenged, but only a handful of times, and it never worked out for the challenger. There
Go democracy.
There was one, I forget what his name was. One Lord Commander that tried to like leave it to his bastard son, and that didn't. Nobody liked that,
No.
so they said no, sir. And then the Night's Watch has also always had a maester serve at each of its castles. And I, for the longest time, watching the show and even in the books, was confused about what the maesters are. Because the way they dress, they look a little like priests.
Yeah.
So you would think they're like of the faith, but they are not. They actually have nothing to do with the faith. They're actually like scientists, like historians/scientists. And alchemists, if you will, but so they just kind of are like a wealth of knowledge, and they study at the Citadel, and that's where they get all their knowledge, and they're supposed to just be with each. There's one that lives with each noble family usually, and then there's one with each little castle at the Night's Watch, but they're just supposed to be able to give good advice. They can help the lords with like reading, because some of the lords don't know how to read, like the Baratheon in the show.
Yes.
In the House of the Dragon.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yes, that's why if you've seen that episode in season 1, towards the very end of season 1, where little Jace hands his note from his mom to the Baratheon guy, and the Baratheon guy hands it straight to his maester because he doesn't know how to read. So that is their role. And then in present day Game of Thrones, it's Maester Aemon is at Castle Black, and he gets really tight with both Jon and Samwell. But yeah, little note on the maesters. The Night's Watchmen, their only real responsibility is to defend the wall. So therefore, they have always maintained that they honor any and all kings in the Seven Kingdoms, but they serve none. So they stay neutral during any squabbles between the kingdoms. They forsake their familial ties, which comes into play a lot. There are a lot of time, even in present day Game of Thrones, like Jon wants to go and like help Rob, and then Sansa.
But you can't.
Nope, you cannot. And then you find out in the show that Maester Aemon is actually a Targaryen, and so he stayed at the wall even though stuff was going down with his nieces and nephews. Yeah, so they are supposed to kind of relinquish all of that when they take their vows. And then another thing that you probably are familiar with if you've seen the show is the horns that the Watch uses. And they have this big horn on top of the wall that it's one of the people's job to blow it if they need to. And if they blow it one time, that just means everything is chill. It's just some rangers coming back. They did their ranging. They've come home to report back. Everybody chill. If you hear two horns, that means there's some wildlings coming.
Oh,
so we
panic a little bit.
We gotta gear up. We gotta shoot some stuff down at them. Make sure
they have a moosh.
Yes, make sure our tunnel is sealed. All that stuff. However, if you hear three horns, that means that is the others. They have come.
And we full panic.
Yes. Full panic, yes.
Yeah.
It's a full send on that one. And nobody really knows what to do because nobody's ever heard three horns.
Yep.
It really hasn't had, they've not had to do three.
It's almost like a fairy tale at this point. So you're like,
Right.
It'll never happen to me.
Yeah. So really, when they hear that first horn, they all just kind of stop and listen for if there's a second horn. And then if there is a second horn, they all just automatically think wildlings.
We assume wildlings.
Nobody is ever like, oh, let's stop and see if there's a third. They all
it
just
ain't gonna
kinda
happen.
Like, no. But it does eventually.
It wouldn't be a good fantasy story without a good horn. There's always a horn.
There's the Horn of Winter, and then the Night's Watch horn. There's a lot of horns.
The Horn of
and walls.
Gondor. I mean, it's just
Gondor calls for aid.
Gondor calls for aid.
So the Night's Watch is supposed to wear all black, and that's just their uniform. It always has been. Because
these are the emo boys of Westeros.
Yes, the Snapes.
Yeah.
The Professor Snapes. Because they wear all black, the wildlings call them crows. Use a crow.
Yes, now you
You're a
unlocked
crow.
a memory. Yes.
And if you live in the north, if you're a person who just lives in the north in any house, you know to be on the lookout for people wandering around the north dressed all in black. Because if they are wandering around the north and not at the wall, they are probably a deserter and they need to be punished.
Oh.
So yes, that's just a little fun. I think people in the south would just be like,
Whatever.
that's just an emo boy, like you.
Yeah.
But the people in the north, they know, like, ooh, you're AWOL.
You are running away from your responsibilities.
That's right. And then, okay, here's where I got a little carried away because there's a lot. I mean, obviously, like in the present day, it's Jeor Mormont is the Lord Commander. He's what's his name's dad, the guy hanging out with Daenerys. He's his dad. They're from Bear Island, all that good stuff. He's like the 997th Lord Commander.
There's a few.
So there's a lot. There's a lot of Lord Commanders, and I could have gotten real lost in like naming some of them and all the things, but there were two that I just wanted to real quick tell you about because there's some lore, and we love
the love
of lore.
of lore.
All right, so the 13th Lord Commander. So this is
we're way in the
way
beginning.
back when they still lived at the Night Fort. The 13th Lord Commander gained notoriety and was coined or called the Night's King. Knight with an apostrophe S.
Interesting.
Yes. And that happened obviously during the Age of Heroes. I was supposed to pull up the wiki, my bad. Oop. But long story, I will pull that up in a second. Long story short, he fell in love with a woman that he saw while he was on the top of the wall.
I feel like you would not be able to tell from that far up.
Yes. Yeah, 10 from afar.
Yeah.
That's a far 10.
700 feet, that's my woman.
This woman had skin white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Sound familiar?
Oh, it sounds
Sounds
like
familiar.
a other.
Sounds othery.
Yep.
Yes. So, and then her skin to the touch was cold as ice.
Oh, yeah, she not good.
She no bueno. But
You fell in love with this person?
yes, he was the Night's King. Was fearless, and he chased and caught and loved her. And then when he gave his seed to her, woof, he gave his soul as well.
No. So I see where we're getting where the show probably got.
Some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of merged some storylines, I think, a little.
It's a sick title to be the Night King.
Night's King, yes. He did bring this woman back to the Night Fort, so she came through the wall.
You had one job to not do that.
He declared her a queen and himself her king.
Are they supposed to be celibate?
Yeah. mhm.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Take no woman, father no
Oh,
children. Yeah.
oh,
All the
boy.
things. And then with some strange sorcery, he bound the Night's Watch brothers to his will, ruled the Night Fort as his own castle for 13 years with his corpse queen by his side.
Corpse Queen.
Yes. I just always picture Coraline, but I know that's not what that's not what she looked like. But yeah, during his 13 years, he was the 13th Lord Commander, and he only ruled for 13
I see a
years.
theme of 13 here.
There's something's up with the 13.
Isn't that an unlucky number?
I don't know. It's Taylor Swift's favorite number though, so
Oh, she's breaking the status quo.
quit hating on 13, okay? I think maybe he got it from like Friday the 13th,
Probably.
maybe. But I don't know that. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, during his reign, the horrific atrocities were committed. Tales are still told of these atrocities in the north, and it was not until Brandon the Breaker, the king in the north, and Jormungand,
Hey ho.
Jormungand, there he is.
He's got a horn.
He was the king beyond the wall, which means he was a wildling who happened to somehow unite all the different clans of wildlings. And the two of them, the king in the north, Brandon the Breaker. This is not Bran the Builder, to be clear. This is a real Brandon,
A real one.
real Brandon. And then Jormungand. They joined all of their forces. They brought the Night's King down, and the Night's Watchmen were freed from the spell. All of that good stuff. So when he finally was defeated, it was discovered that he had been making sacrifices to the others.
Hey, yo.
All records of him were destroyed. His name was forbidden and forgotten.
Jeez.
No one really knows who he was. Old Nan.
Nan.
We love Old Nan.
We do.
She's all about the lore. She claims that it was a Stark gone bad, a Dark Stark, if you will.
Oh, what a name, a Dark Stark.
And yeah, so no, but I don't
That's
know.
some tea right there.
I don't have any hypotheses as to who it might have been. Do
That's
you?
juicy. I don't, but I really like that story.
yeah.
I want to know more.
Yeah. And then, okay, so we're leaving the Night's King. That's his lore. Do with it what you will. He
Yep.
was making sacrifices. He gave his seed. So, yep, there's that. And then now we're going to talk about this other Lord Commander who is much more recent. He's
Okay.
much more recent. His name, and we know his name, is Brynden Rivers. So he's a bastard.
Oh, is it
from,
with a
from the Riverlands. Yes, he was born in the
Yes.
Riverlands. Yes, and his nickname is Bloodraven. Do you remember hearing about Bloodraven?
We've got some cool nicknames up in this joint.
do.
I do not remember Bloodraven.
Okay, well, you're about to learn.
Okay.
So he was the bastard son of King Aegon the Fourth. Is that the fourth? Yeah, that's the fourth.
Yes.
Roman numerals get me. They always get me. He was Targaryen. But it was his sixth mistress. Her name was Lady Melissa Blackwood.
We've had 6 mistresses.
We have,
That's-
and there was a seventh too.
That's an issue.
But you know the Blackwoods.
Yep.
We've talked about them. Just a quick refresher. One, they still follow the old gods. They believe in them and they follow them, even though they're from the south. And then 2, they are always fighting with the Brackens, House Bracken. They do not like each other, and that battle goes on for centuries. So yeah, that's the Blackwoods, and that's his mom.
Oh,
So when he was born, he was albino. So he had milk white skin, long white hair, which could have been from the Targaryenism or the albinoism, who knows. And he had red eyes,
oh, creepy.
super creepy. And then on the right side of his face, or kind of his neck extending to his face, he had a red wine stain birthmark that kind of came up and over. And that birthmark is the reason that people started calling him Bloodraven.
Ah, fitting.
Yes. The Targaryen colors are black and red, and he is an acknowledged bastard eventually in his life, so he is allowed to wear black and red, but he kind of added in some gray tones as well.
We got a fashionista on our hands.
So he's always seen in like red, black, gray colors. That's all he ever wears. So, but that put together with him being an albino is kind of a striking, like, you know who he is when you see him because he stands out.
Huh.
So a lot of people throughout the realm knew who he was because of that. He also lost an eye during the first Blackfire Rebellion. There's a few of those, but it was the first one. He lost his eye. He prefers not to wear a patch.
Oh, he owns that.
So he just, lets it all hang out.
Yeah.
Yep. And he has 2 weapons that he's really skilled at using. And they're his 2 favorites. One of them is Dark Sister.
I know this one.
Dark Sister is a super old Valyrian steel sword that was once carried by Visenya, who is one of the sister wives of Aegon the Conqueror. Literally a sister and a wife, not like a Mormon.
So disturbing, but that's Westeros.
Yep,
Yeah, it's okay.
That's the Targaryens. And then later on is owned, or whatever you want to call it, held by Daemon Targaryen, like that's married to Rhaenyra. So yeah, some of the times
Wow.
people.
See, we're connecting the dots.
We are. It's an important sword to be clear. And then he has a longbow that he actually likes the longbow better, and he's a little more skilled at it, even though he's good at both. But it's made of weirwood, friends.
Heyo, is that legal? Is that frowned upon?
Hard to say.
Okay.
Hard to say.
It must be pretty good then, though.
Yeah. And he served as Hand of the King, which is a big job, to 2 different Targaryen kings. And then he was also a Master of Whisperers. That he kind of combined the 2 jobs. So if you know the show, you know Hand of the King is Ned Stark, and then it's Tywin Lannister, and it's a bunch of people. But and then the Master of Whisperers, though, is always Varys. That's his job, is to the Master of Whisperers is supposed to
He likes the gossip and the tea.
Yes, and then they pass along all of that to the king, just so that the king can stay informed on what's happening in the realm. So yeah, this guy did a combo job. He did them both.
Busy bee.
Busy bee. But because he was so good at being the Master of Whisperers, he was rumored to have used sinister or magical means to obtain many of his secrets and rumors.
Oh.
And that it was common, like even the common folk, you would ask them, how many eyes does Bloodraven have? And then the other person would answer 1,000 eyes and 1.
God, what a reputation. Awesome.
Yes. So there's a lot more lore surrounding like things he did as Hand of the King, but I'm gonna skip ahead and we're gonna go to where he gets sent to the wall as kind of a prisoner. He kind of gets in trouble.
Oh boy.
And he gets sent to the wall, and eventually, while he's up there, he is elected Lord Commander, becomes Lord Commander, and he took Dark Sister with him to the wall. And then there was on the same little like caravan going from King's Landing up to the wall was a brand new young maester, and his name was Maester Aemon.
Wow.
So they actually went to the wall at the
So
same
we're
time.
that close to
Yeah.
the actual storyline.
Yep. So yeah, and then he again served for 13 years.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Why the 13? Why the face?
Why? Why? So he served for 13 years as Lord Commander, and then he went ranging beyond the wall and never returned.
Oh.
Until
Oh.
present day. We're in present day.
Oh, we're caught up.
This is Bran Stark, the Bran that is in our Game of Thrones books. Bran, he travels with Jojen and Mira Reed. They eventually make it beyond the wall. And when they do, they discover the three-eyed crow. In the book, it's not the raven, it's the three-eyed crow in a cave. And also in that cave is a bunch of children of the forest.
Oh.
And the three-eyed crow reveals to Bran that he is Brynden Rivers' blood raven.
What?
Yes. So
My head.
yes.
So he turned into a raven?
He's a human. He's kind of like part of like the root system of a giant weirwood tree. Because if
Gotcha.
you remember in the show does this part well. I will credit the show when they do things well.
Yes. I am remembering. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they get to this big weirwood tree. There's a bunch of whites trying to attack them as they get in. The children throw their little magic balls and get the whites away so that Mira and Hodor and Bran get inside the weirwood tree, and they go down to like where the roots are, and there's Bloodraven.
Oh my God.
Kinda
So
like-
it's Brynden Rivers?
It's Brynden Rivers.
Just chilling? That
Chinchillin.
poor guy. That must be boring.
Yeah. Cold Hands is in the show. They make Cold Hands Benjen Stark. That's not reality, or at least it's not confirmed reality. It might be, I don't know, but in the book, he's just called Cold Hands, and he helps them get there to the weirwood tree with Brynden Rivers and all that. But he calls Bloodraven the last green seer, and a green seer is somebody who has the ability to see the future and the past. They can kind of see anything. They don't always know whether it's the future or the past, or if it's happening right now. But yeah. So he's got this green sight.
I want to
ability.
rewatch that scene now.
Yes. So that's it. That's what we got.
That was awesome.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. So
You don't realize how much of that connects to the actual world.
right. So to just real quick summarize, the Night's Watch is deeply, deeply intertwined with the goings on beyond the wall and even on our side of the wall. And they're absolutely going to be the first people to know when stuff starts going down with the others. And they maybe have even sparked some of that stuff unknowingly or accidentally or maybe on purpose.
Who's to say?
No one knows.
No one knows indeed.
But yeah.
Mr. I'm going to sleep with one of the others.
Yeah.
God. Bold move, Cotton.
Indeed. Well, that concludes our tour of the wall and the Night's Watch.
That was riveting.
I hope I
liked
made
that.
it. I hope I made it right.
Yeah, that was juicy. I had no idea.
The tea be spilt.
I want to know more about the Night's King now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but it's also like not much is known
Because they destroyed the records.
Yeah. Yep.
Balls.
Yeah.
I want to know more. Well, good stuff. So I think that is our wrap. Well, fellow adventurers, that is a wrap for today's journey into the realms of Westeros and Middle-earth. We hope you've enjoyed journeying through the histories, mysteries, and fascinating lore of these worlds.
We will return with insights, laughs, and maybe even some unexpected dragons of wisdom along the way. Next up in our Middle-earth adventure, we will learn of the coming of the elves and of Thingol and Melian.
Yes.
Our tour of Westeros will take us to many pit stops throughout the entire realm as we are introduced to the wildlings and the children of the forest.
Woo! That'll be exciting.
Yes.
So until then, stay curious and keep the conversation going on our socials. And thank you for tuning in. And remember, the best adventures are the ones we take together. We swear it by the old gods and the new. Peace.